Hi, it's Jana at the 4-H office, and today's Fun Friday activity, we are going to knit without using knitting needles. We're going to create our own knitting machine at home that you can reuse. So what you need to get started, you need something circular like a red Solo cup with the bottom cut out, or an oatmeal container cut just about in half, or if you have an empty roll of duct tape, you can use that as well. The different diameters around the container will determine how big your scarf is. These knitting machines will just make a tube, a scarf that you can create and give away as presents or increase your own fashion accessories. So to get started, whatever you use, you need to make sure that the bottom is cut out. And if you need help, ask mom and dad or an older teen to help you cut the bottom out. Your next step is to get some craft sticks. I like the bigger ones because they're easier to knit with. You can also use the thinner craft sticks as well. It's just that your stitching will be a little bit different in size. It'll be a little smaller. So you need to figure out how many craft sticks you want and to space them equally apart around the outside of your circle form. I used 5 on this one. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on my oatmeal container. So you're going to space them equally distant, duct tape them together, make sure they're kind of tight because you will be pulling on your knitting machine and you don't want to pull them off. So once you have this done, you're next going to choose your yarns. I like a thicker, chunkier yarn when I use my knitting machine just to give a thicker, warmer scarf. I actually made this one using 3 different balls of yarn. If you're just getting started, try 1, try 2. If you're looking for something a little bit smaller, you could actually use a toilet paper tube and attach 3 or 4 craft sticks to that and make more of a necklace as opposed to a scarf. So we're going to get started. And basically, I'm going to use 3 different thinner yarns to create a scarf today. So I want to make sure all my yarns, the ends, are as close to being at the same starting point. We are simply going to drop our yarn through the cup. I like to have the tail stick out a little bit through the bottom. It helps me hang on to it. Now, the nice thing about your knitting machine is you don't have to be left-handed or right-handed to try to learn the stitches. You just have to be able to wind. So what I like to do is put my thumb on my tails that are hanging down to hold them in, and you're simply going to wind. The knitting machine is all about winding your thread. So you'll wind once, wind a second time, grab your yarn that's still attached to your skein and just hold it. Where you started, where your thumb is, where the tails are, you're going to take the bottom wind, which would have been your first wind, and just simply pull it up and over. It's okay, my tails came out. We are going to fix that. Grab my tails back down, move on to my second stitch, pull up and over. Make sure that the thread that's still on your craft sticks that you push down so that they don't come popping off. So it's just an up and over motion to create your stitching. Now, do we want these super tight? Absolutely not, because you won't be able to pull up and over. But do we want them extremely loose so that you have holes in your stitching? Not necessarily. I like a tighter stitch when I knit with my knitting machine. So once I get back to the end where my skeins are, I'm going to simply start again and just keep winding. Get to the end, up and over. Now, if you are using more than 1 skein of yarn, please make sure you have approximately the same amount in the 2 or 3 skeins that you're using so that as you're knitting, your scarf is all going to be the same length, the same color pattern. You may want to measure against the person that you're intending this for, just to kind of make sure it's a little long. Like this one here, kind of a little short. It does stretch, so we can make it a little bit longer. But just keep that in mind as you're knitting. So I'm just going to go through. I'm going to keep winding and stitching, and I'll be back to show you my progress. We are back. It's been about 5 minutes. I have quite the chain scarf started, and I just wanted to show it to you. Now, what happens if you forget where you ended your skeins and to begin again? It doesn't even matter. It doesn't show up. It's not like you have to be extremely precise while you're doing this. So what happens if you're trying to pull your second stitch up over the top and the top comes off? You simply just unwind and then re-thread it by rewinding around your craft sticks. And you'll just continue on until you've got the right length, or you just need to end it because it's the right size for the person that you're intending it for. So the next question is, how do I take care of the ends of my yarn? You're simply just going to weave them through and give them a little tie off and tuck into the end of your scarf. That's why I like to leave a little bit longer tails, A, to hang on to, and B, to have enough to tie. So I'm simply going to tie a couple square knots, making sure that it's inside. If you wanted to, you could totally weave this back through and make it tighter, and to just weave your ends and not have a little knot. But I like to make a tiny little knot that's not seen very well. Cut my ends right close without cutting my knot, and then just simply tucking in. Now, this is a thinner weight yarn. It's not quite as heavy as this, and this was 3 different skeins. So depending on how you want your scarf, if you want something really warm for the cold weather, if you're looking more for a fashion accessory, can determine what type of yarn you use. So you're simply going to keep on over and in and having your scarf drop through the center of your frame until you have the correct length. So to end your scarf, you're simply going to slide very carefully all of your stitches off of your craft sticks so that they all come off at the same time. If you get one off before the other, you're likely to pull. Now, you have to be very careful when you do this, because if you pull too tight, you're actually going to start pulling your stitches out and then unraveling your scarf. So as this comes off, you're simply just going to push and have them come off at about the same time. You will then cut your yarn, leaving some tails. And what I like to do to end my scarf, making sure that you cut about the same length, is to go back through backwards, catch those last stitches so that they're not prone to pulling out, and just kind of threading it backwards through your loops. Let me get a couple done so that I'm not losing the whole thing. And you don't want to pull too tight when you're doing this, because you want the starting end of your scarf and the finishing end to have the same diameter. So you're simply going to take your loop and stick your tails right through, gathering up your last stitches so that they don't pull out. And make sure that if you have multiple loops, that you're going through all the loops with all pieces, all colors of your yarn that you use to knit with. So when you get to the end, you will have all of your final stitches caught, and then you can simply make a little knot or keep threading it, but definitely knotting off your threads and creating a very discreet little knot that you can tuck inside and hide. When you have that done, your next step is to cut the tails off of the yarn so that they don't show. And here you have it. You have your own fashion scarf that you can wear. It's also a great activity for counting, as you count and loop around your framework as well. This is Janet at the 4-H office. I hope you have a great Friday.